Okay, we are live. Hello, hello, everybody. I am Fro, your host, and welcome to another edition of the Pale Galilean. Today, as you saw in the title, we are continuing part two of our dissection of the debate between David Wood and Daniel Haqiqatjou. And I've now since been educated in understanding that my audio and the audio of the video can come up a little crass sometimes. So what we are now going to do is I've learned to mute myself before pressing play on the video. So without further ado, we are going to share first. Okay. No. Shut the hell up. No. Okay. All right, we got that taken care of now. Stream is looking good. It sounds good. Let's share. Just give me a few moments here. We don't want that. We want this one. Share it. Okay, so the good news is that YouTube has actually decided. I've been on this video for so long. YouTube timestamped exactly where we left off. So this is gonna be perfect news. Perfect news for convenience sake. I'm going to mute myself and we can continue. And I'll pause intermittently to add commentary so that the audience understands just why David Wood failed in every conceivable metric regarding his argumentation against Daniel Haqiqatjou.
And you have not addressed any of the points that I made. Like, explain to me, is Moses evil or not? This should be not something that difficult for you to address. So far, the explanation that you have given doesn't really make sense. And also, with you mentioned earlier this idea that the commands of the Mosaic Law were limited to a particular geographic region and a particular time. Again, that's not what Hebrew and Jewish scholars have said. Maimonides, considered one of the foremost Jewish scholars of history, said that there is a continuous command because of these verses about the Amaleks to wage war, to wipe out paganism, including Christian paganism, throughout the entire globe. So this is an expansive global war against everyone, basically, who is not following the Mosaic Law. So everyone has that interpretation. You have something that has no historical precedence, an interpretation that's not based on the actual words of the Old Testament.
Okay, so I paused it right there to do two things. One, I want to check the video quality, make sure the audio is coming through. Two, I want to add some context to what Haqiqatjou was saying. So basically, the debate you can see right there. Actually, I hate this. No, I think that's just as much. Okay, here we go. Okay. So right here, so essentially the debate that David Wood and Daniel Haqiqatjou are having is regarding the way that Islam and Christianity frame violence and tolerance. Specifically, which way of understanding and which way of framing these two behaviors is better. So obviously, David Wood thinks that Christianity has the better understanding of violence and tolerance. And the inverse is true with Haqiqatjou. He thinks Islam has the better understanding of violence and tolerance in a society. So to put some context here, because this is a very, very long debate, over 3.5 hours, of which I've only been able to cover about 50 minutes in the last part. So to put in the context, to basically make a long story short, Daniel Haqiqatjou has put together very seasoned arguments for his side, and David basically responds, "Well, yeah, but Islam's evil." That's basically what he's saying. So when when Daniel is making well-seasoned arguments for his side and kind of expressing them in argumentation, David Wood has never replied to any of his points in the whole 50 minutes. In all their opening dialogue, and right now, all of their responses, David Wood has not in, in any meaningful sense engaged in Haqiqatjou's objections to his own Christian understanding. And in my view, it's because David Wood's Christianity, his specific brand rather, makes it so he can't do that. And I think as this debate unfolds, uh, as we start completely unpacking the video, going in further, we're going to see this. We're going to see it more, and it's going to be more and more apparent that David Wood does not have any good retorts or replies to Haqiqatjou. So first, I'm going to do that. I like this screen setup more, but we need to see the video title, or at least for the purposes there. We don't need to see it now. And I'm going to put this on screen. That is the link for anybody can join in making commentary with me, because I very much enjoy an open forum. And we're going to continue.
Testament and the authoritative religious interpretation of not only Jews but even Christian scholars, because you have a lot of Christian scholars and emperors, Christian Roman emperors, who interpreted the Old Testament in this kind of violent expansionist way, all the way up until the colonial era, and with colonial slavery, wiping out of the Native Americans, wiping out many native peoples throughout the world. All of that violence was justified on the basis of labeling the enemies of the Christians as Amalekites. So how can you deny all of this precedence, all of this interpretation, and instead you're talking about miracles and something that's really unrelated to this debate?
Yeah, he's actually true on that. Well, sorry, he's right on that, not true. But yeah, that's a true and fair point. Because when the Spaniards first came into the New World and saw the Aztecs and saw the religions of the indigenous peoples, Mexico and south of what we now know as Mexico, they were absolutely disgusted by what they saw. For them, they described it as hellish. And you know what? They're not wrong either. It absolutely was. And when they saw this, when they looked at the disgusting practices of Native American religion in that time, for instance, you'll find murals in Aztec ruins of priests literally ripping the still beating hearts out of victims and throwing their corpses down the temple steps as if they were garbage. And that's not an inaccurate sentiment when you look at what we know about Aztec theology, because human life was seen as kind of a utility, and the way we might use water or food. That's how that's how they saw human life, to that of a god. And so Daniel isn't wrong here. So when the Spaniards came in and they looked around, they saw religion there as it was practiced. They were absolutely disgusted by it and compared these people to the Amalekites and other Canaanite nations that also had a penchant of butchering their children as sacrifices. So what Daniel is describing here is absolutely true. And here's the thing. David Wood, I guarantee you, will have no response to this. Because it's been 50 minutes. If he had a response, I'd imagine he'd have given it already. If he actually has a response or decides to respond to this point, I'm going to be very surprised. Let's go find out.
We'll kick it over to David for 5 minutes.
Yeah, on that last point, that it was expansionistic, and wasn't limited geographically. Exodus 23:31, God says to the Israelites, I will fix your boundary from the Red Sea to the Sea of the Philistines, and from the wilderness to the river Euphrates. So I mean, he actually gives them a boundary, and you're saying there's no boundary, it's supposed to conquer the entire world. You're looking back at that from an Islamic perspective. You say Jewish scholars don't view this, the Old Testament, as limited, but our topic is not the Jewish perspective, it's the Christian perspective. The Christian perspective, we point out that in the Old Testament, God repeatedly said that there was a new covenant coming, that is not the final covenant, that there is a new covenant, and if you're still waiting on a new covenant, that's up to you, but Jesus said he was bringing the new covenant. Now, you said we're not debating miracles or these other issues about Muhammad. Yeah, the debate is not focused on those. But if you're saying I'm inconsistent because I believe that God had the right to give life and take life in the Old Testament, and that God could wipe us out if he wanted. And you're saying, well, if you think that God can give life and take life, why do you have a problem with Muhammad doing it? I think I've explained this multiple times, that I really don't understand. I don't understand how this is not clear. If God is,
you see, ladies and gentlemen, this is what I mean. Okay, David Wood completely missed the point. Haqiqatjou's argument isn't that because God has the authority to take life and give life. What's your aversion with Muhammad doing it? No, that's not Haqiqatjou's argument. Haqiqatjou's argument is that what we see Muhammad doing in the Quran and the Hadith and the Sunnah is not unlike what we see Moses doing in the Torah. Okay? So his whole understanding is completely off. Nobody's looking at Islam and wondering, does Muhammad have the authority of God? Of course not. No. Muhammad is receiving his authority, okay? In the same way Moses is receiving his authority. Haqiqatjou's whole argument is that why do you object to Muhammad's behaviors when Moses is doing a very similar thing and under very similar assumptions? So why do you object? Why do you criticize Muhammad for being anti-Westernism when it's quite evident and clear that Moses is anti-Westernism? So David's position is in no way at all consistent. And again, I would argue he can't be, because his Christianity is based too much on Westernism, liberalism, and so it cannot make sense of a world that didn't have it. And so he's imposing his understanding of ethics and morality, specifically his Westernism understanding of those things, onto a people that would never have subscribed to such a philosophy. And that's all that Haqiqatjou is pointing out. And David Wood is doing a marvelous job of missing the point. Let's continue.
standing here right now, blasting lightning bolts, and he gives us orders, and we say, we don't care what you say. God can issue whatever punishment he wants. When someone like Muhammad comes along, thinking he's demon-possessed, delivering revelations from the devil and then blaming the devil for them, trying repeatedly to kill himself, saying that he's the victim of black magic that gives him delusional thoughts and false beliefs. When he goes around, he's sucking on the tongues of little boys, and Aisha has to constantly wash the semen off of him. When he comes up with all these rules saying that most of the punishment of the grave is from urinating improperly, so he has to tell you how to pee properly and how to wipe yourself properly, and he just seems massively obsessive compulsive. When I'm looking at someone like this, I'm thinking that this is the least reliable person in history. And the general rule, Daniel, is not everyone can just come along and say, hey, now the entire world has to submit to my rules. Now the entire world has to submit to my rules. You can't just follow any random person who makes these kinds of claims. If you're going to let someone tell you how to live, if you're going to let someone tell you about God, you should probably find someone who's trustworthy. And Moses, who leads the children of Israel out of bondage, out of slavery, through the Red Sea, into the promised land, pillar of cloud by day, pillar of fire by night, raining food down on them, and then giving them continuing, ongoing, miraculous preservation in Israel, I look at that and say, okay, well, if he does that, then should probably listen to him. Talking about Jesus, even according to Islam, he was raising the dead. He was cleansing lepers. It was confirmed by miracles. Muhammad comes along. All the Quran does is deny that he could perform miracles. And then you have to go to later sources when we know for a fact that was a period when Muslims are inventing stories left and right. We know this because the reason for compiling collections like Bukhari and so on is there's so many false stories being invented. They were inventing stories about Muhammad like it was a sport. And again, even if you wanted to say you trust them, they contradict the Quran. And so as far as us debating violence and intolerance, yes, we are.
You're debating violence and intolerance, and yet you insist on ignoring those. Again, like, as I said in the part 1, even if we were to, what is the word? Even if we were to assert and assume that all those things are true about Muhammad, that he sucked on little boys' tongues, made love to a 9-year-old, yada, yada, all that, again, that doesn't have to do anything with the argument at hand. Again, it has nothing to do with this here. And then what you're saying about trustworthiness? Since when did trustworthiness come to be part of? When did trustworthiness, David, come to be part of this understanding of this debate? When? Where? Nowhere. Okay, are you legitimately telling me that if Moses was trustworthy, you would be completely okay with him in real time slaughtering the Amalekites, going to war against other nations, utterly destroying them, and sometimes down to the infant babe? You're going to be okay with that? Because in part 1, you seem to be as if you would not be okay with that, and rather you were criticizing Muhammad for these things. Now again, trustworthiness is not an issue up for debate here. If you read the title, right, what is up for debate is whether or not where violence and intolerance have their place in society. And so you criticize Muhammad not for being untrustworthy to begin with, although you brought these things up. You first were criticizing him for violence. Where, David? Where? Do you see Moses doing these exact things? And yet you don't criticize him nearly as harshly. In fact, you bend over backwards to defend the honor of Moses, when Moses is doing the things very similar to what Muhammad had done. Now you see, David, I can make a distinction. I can do what you're failing to do. I can take on Muhammad and call him evil. I can look at Moses and call what he's doing righteous, because there are distinctions that can be made between these two characters in how they're going about their mission, what they're doing, and more importantly and specifically, why they're doing it. These are not distinctions you have made at any point in this debate yet, David. Your whole thinking process is that, well, Moses is more trustworthy than Muhammad, therefore you shouldn't listen to Muhammad. Oh, by the way, Muhammad is wrong because he's done the same thing Moses did. None of this makes sense. Like, none of it. I mean, I guess maybe you find me as a trustworthy person, so I guess you'd be completely okay with me doing the things Moses is doing. Again, trustworthiness has nothing to do with the subject or topic at hand. Now, I belabored the point long enough. We can continue.
I have no problem with I have no problem with God giving life, taking life. It's how do we know that something is actually coming from God? We have no reason to think that Muhammad is from God, and so Muhammad has no business going around taking life. Now, how much time do I have? I forgot to set a timer.
You've got 46 seconds.
Oh, awesome. And you say that you're not saying that Moses did these things. You believe that earlier revelations were corrupted. Your prophet certainly did. Your prophet did. Your prophet believed that the Jews still had the inspired, preserved, authoritative word of God. In fact, in Sunan Abu Dawood, he ordered the Jews to bring him a copy of the Torah, and they brought him their copy of the Torah, and he said, "I believe in you and in the one who revealed you." Your God says in the Quran, you have no ground to stand upon unless you stand upon the Torah, the gospel, and all the revelation that has come to you. So he clearly believed that the Torah is the inspired, preserved, authoritative word of God. And if you're saying he's wrong, well, that's one more reason to not trust Muhammad.
You got it. We'll kick it back over to Daniel. Floor is all yours, Daniel.
Yeah, so David, do you have that copy of the Torah that the Prophet ﷺ was mentioning? You have the copy so I can see exactly what is in it, so I can see if it matches the current Old Testament? Again, a completely irrelevant and stupid point, frankly. So let me understand your position, David. So basically, you're saying that you would support sex slavery, you would support executing apostates, you would support slavery in general, you would support stoning adulterers, you would support, wife beating, wife scourging, you would support all of these things if it was commanded by a prophet that had sufficient miracles. Am I understanding you correctly? So you're just hinging this entire debate on whether the Prophet ﷺ had miracles that were sufficiently convincing or not. That's like your whole position. So really, you have no problem with all of these aspects of Islamic law. You find them perfectly acceptable because if the Prophet ﷺ was a true prophet, and this is the message that he's bringing, then there's no objection that you have to sex slavery, slavery in general, punishment for death penalty for blasphemy, for apostasy, and on and on. You have no issues with those things in and of themselves. Just clarify that for the audience, because I think that'll be very revealing to your Christian audience. Regarding, Muslims have rules when it comes to purity and urine and how to clean themselves and wipe themselves. Yes, Muslims do have that. Islam does have that kind of level of guidance because Muslims are clean. Muslims are pure. We know how to purify and clean ourselves with water. And this is part of the guidance of revelation from the creator of all human beings. And that's the thing, that Islam brings guidance from the minutia of human existence, the day-to-day existence of human beings, as well as the macro level things, such as how to run society, how to have proper commercial transactions, how to have proper just judiciary systems, how to have all of these things that are so important for human existence. This was, as I mentioned, the Christian governance question. There's nothing in Jesus's teaching that provides guidance on this. And I'm not trying to blame Jesus for this. I just don't think that that was his aim. I obviously, as a Muslim, love Jesus more than life itself. Jesus is the Messiah. Muslims believe that we're awaiting his return, his triumphant return to establish the kingdom of God on earth, which, by the way, is going to be quite violent, even according to the eschatology and the apocalyptic passages within the New Testament. But he wasn't, that wasn't his aim, to establish within that time 2,000 years ago the kingdom of God and establish rules and establish regulations in the way that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam did, in the way that Moses with the Mosaic law did before. So how can Christians have an ideal Christian nation? What is the ideal Christian nation? This is what, David, you haven't even touched upon this topic. Please define that for us. And again, you can't just cite Augustine here and whatever cherry picking that you want to do to cite these kinds of figures and the ones that most match this kind of liberal, secular, modernist view that you constantly advocate on your channel. Show us within Jesus's teachings. Show us within the Bible what are the principles of just governance and this ideal Christian nation, because that's what I'm really curious about. And yeah, I think that it's don't bring into this discussion about miracles and these irrelevant issues. Stay on the topic, violence and intolerance, address those issues.
Okay, go for David. Go ahead, David.
Okay, and again, this is a perfect example of how Haqiqatjou has a far better understanding of the topic at hand than Wood does. Okay? Because Haqiqatjou had said, so essentially, you don't mind the slavery and the violence and what you see going on in the Bible if a valid prophet had sufficient miracles to guide him. And essentially, he's not wrong. Because again, when David Wood is criticizing Haqiqatjou's position, what does he bring up? He brings up supposed moral deficiencies of Muhammad. He brings up the lack of miracles supposedly in the Quran regarding Muhammad, and that's really his own argument. His whole rejection of Muhammad, his whole rejection of this, is based on the lack of miracles. And Haqiqatjou correctly brings it up. Furthermore, when David was quoting Augustine and St. Thomas Aquinas earlier on, he was actually he was addressing them in their understanding of just war theory as a way of criticizing Islam, because the war in the Islamic world, but both contemporary and in Muhammad's time, was very violent. But again, this has nothing to do with the debate, nothing to do with the topic at hand. Okay? Literally nothing. So it just boggles the mind as to why David would just kind of go face first into this line of argumentation that doesn't help his case. Then the Muslim skeptic, Haqiqatjou, understands that none of this is helping his case and understands that he has nothing to fear from David's criticism, because so far it has failed as basic criticism. And so what Haqiqatjou is now going back on, what he's honing and focusing himself in on, is this understanding of law now. Because again, as Haqiqatjou had said in part 1 of my series here, Muhammad, or rather God, through Muhammad, had established a large body of corpus of law, Sharia, right, in the form of the Quran and its commentaries in the Hadith and Sunnah. And so with that, he has a divine revelation that touches on how man ought to govern himself in every area of human affair. Not unlike how the Jews understand the Torah and the Talmud and the Mishnah and other related documents. Just like the Jews, Muslims have a corpus, a body of law that dictates every interaction of human affairs. So now he is pressing David, what is the ideal Christian state? Because if there's one thing that Haqiqatjou understands bluntly, is that the ideal Christian state is not liberal Westernism. It's not. It clearly is not. Both in the way Jesus speaks, in the way that Old Testament prophets have acted, in the way that the Old Law is structured in its commandments. Like, the ideal Christian state would not be what David Wood wants it to be. And Haqiqatjou realizes this, and so now you're beginning to see him capitalize on this. Now, what you're seeing, ladies and gentlemen, whenever you're watching this video, whenever you're watching the stream, rather, I have not watched this part of the debate, okay? From like 30 minutes of this debate onward has been completely uncharted territory for me. So how far and how well Haqiqatjou capitalizes on this is for both of us to discover together. And again, like, this would be an easy thing to confront, because when Haqiqatjou is talking to David Wood, he's talking from the understanding that there's a whole corpus that is obsessed with human affairs. However, Christians understand a Christian state quite differently, in which essentially there's co-regency between the profane and the sacred, between the church and the state. And the fact that David Wood is unable to articulate it that way, because A properly well understanding of Christian society is something David Wood doesn't have a conception of. He's very much inundated with the very Western liberalism that is irreconcilably alien from Christianity. Anyway, I'm going to mute up and we're going to continue.
All right, Daniel, you ask about the ideal Christian nation. There's no concept, and it's Muslims who regard this as a problem because they think of their prophet as coming to take over the world, whereas Jesus said that his kingdom is not of this world. So Jesus isn't here to establish the ideal Christian nation. Jesus is here to build the church. And so he does that. And as far as different types of governments go, again.
And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, that the ideal Christian nation doesn't exist. This flies in the face of literally thousands of years of Christian understanding. First of all, starting from Jesus Christ, and later being further articulated and built upon by St. Augustine, to the way the Christian emperors of Rome understood Christianity, to the way Christianity was understood even less than just 200 years ago. This is what I mean. David Wood's theology is absolutely incapable of tackling Haqiqatjous, incapable of providing a solid foundation of refutation against it. He can't do it. And it's no surprise now, because he openly admits Christianity doesn't have a proper state, or it can't identify a proper state to live in, or it doesn't have an ideal place and time in which it should be established and where it should be established. This is the problem, because what Augustine says, again, the very term secularism, the idea that there is a distinction or that there is a non-religious component to society, you have Augustine to thank for, because he's the first one to have deposited that there is a distinction between the sacred, the profane, the church, which is eternal, and the earth, the world, human governments, which are temporal. And so with the ideal Christian society, it would include secularism. You would have a king or president or whatever government you have, whether prime minister, monarch, or prime minister, monarch, president, whatever, right? You have human governments working with the church to pursue the common good, and that the state has no authority to govern the church, nor the church having an authority to govern the state, but rather they both are to work together to pursue the common good of the whole people of the nation. This is the Christian understanding of the ideal state. And the position that I hold, kind of a subset of overall dominionist theology of Christianity, is specifically called integralism, that Christian morals and ethics ought to be enshrined in secular law. And so the whole idea is that the morality established by the church, her teachings on abortion, contraception, on murder, on the understanding of humans, the fact the idea that humans even have rights, all of this is taught by the church, and her teachings are then protected not only just in the authority of the church, but also in secular law. And therefore, secular authorities then have the duty to govern themselves, to conform to the morality of Holy Mother Church. This is the understanding of the ideal Christian state, of the society. And you have David Wood here in front of you, openly denying it exists. Just wow. And I'm not saying that it doesn't exist. It absolutely does exist. It's just that David Wood's theology, because of the positions he takes on his evangelical Christianity, is utterly incapable of making these distinctions and utterly incapable of refuting Haqiqatjou's problems with Christianity, or rather objections against Christianity, I should say. This has been very enlightening, and my God, I'm not even 10 minutes in, and I'm not even 10 minutes in, and I already have 35 minutes of content. This is going to be ridiculous, ladies and gentlemen. Let's mute up.
And the church would want to influence these governments, but Christianity, far more so than Islam, is principle based more than rule based. In Islam, you have absolutely no clue how to do anything unless Allah tells you. You literally don't know how to pee. You literally do not know how to go to the bathroom. You don't know how to step into the bathroom properly. You have to have all these little rules for everything. And then you say, you see, well, you don't have those in Christianity. Well, Christianity is rule-based. It gives you principles. Love your neighbor as yourself. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you.
No, David, it's not rule-based. Or rather, it is rule-based, and every bit as much rule-based as Islam or Judaism is. The issue is, what rules, David? That is the situation you're tackling, and here's the truth. The fact of the matter is, it is not just that Christianity is rule-based. That's not what makes it distinct. Or rather, what did he say? It's not that it's rule-based or principle-based. Of course, we have rules, we have principles, just like Islam or Judaism does. The difference is the fact that we, Christianity especially, have a unique understanding of secularism, that there is a distinction between the church and the state. And therefore, what you see then is basically what you would call Christianity as being principally based. Okay? It's not so much that we are principally based, but what you are looking at the fact that the Christian's corpus of law is not limited to these large, numerous volume books that you find in the Talmud, in the Mishnah, in the Hadith, and the Sunnah. That's not what's going on. Rather, the law of the Christians are written in three ways: in Scripture, in the teaching authority of the church, and in tradition. Okay? So those are the three streams in which divine revelation comes to Christians. Okay? And not only that, but besides that, God has also written his law in the heart of Christians, so that Christians are able to know God's law that he had written in them from time immemorial. And this is what we have called natural law. It's what is rather articulated in. Hey Diego, what's going on? Hey, if you want to come in, just hit the link. I literally posted it everywhere. So, if you don't want to come in, that's fine, Diego. Just enjoy the show. So anyway, the whole understanding of law is based from this understanding that there is a distinction between the church and the state, that divine revelation has come to us in three forms rather than scripture alone, rather than just very legalistically, and that God's law has been written and imprinted upon our heart. This is the distinction, and these are the differences you see between Islam's understanding of violence and tolerance, David, and your own. And the fact of the matter is, you're unable to make these distinctions. They're beyond you. And I think you're demonstrating that quite well. Let's mute up and come on. Oh, and yeah, Diego, just so y'all know, Diego, just click the link like you did last time to come on in. And that link that you see on the screen, that is the display of the link. So if you can't copy and paste with your mouse, just type that into a different window. You'll be able to come in that way. if of course you want to come in.
It's not built into our system that you have to have all these little rules. We're created in the image of God. We're not drones here, right? We're ambassadors for the Almighty. Now, going back, you said, do I have a copy of the Torah that Muhammad had? Well, that's a copy of the Torah that Muhammad had in 7th century Arabia. So this is almost, this is more than 2,000 years after the Torah has been circulating. Do we know what the Torah that Jews had in the 7th century said? Yes, we have copies of the Torah before that, the Dead Sea Scrolls and so on. We have copies of the Torah afterwards. And so if that's the inspired, preserved, authoritative word of God, according to your God and your prophet, my goodness, if you're saying it's been corrupted, that doesn't go well for your God and your prophet. Now you asked, would I support things like stoning and death penalty for blasphemy? And so you said sex slavery. I just want to clear, when you're talking about the Midianites and so on, if they were going to take those girls, they had to marry them. They had to marry their captives. This isn't just, you're going to be my, I'm taking you as my sex slave. So different from Islam. But as far as stoning and the death penalty for blasphemy, I don't know how many more times I can say it. And if you want me to be as clear as possible, yes, if there is a pillar of cloud right here who is performing all kinds of miracles, raining food down upon us and so on, and that pillar of cloud orders us not to blaspheme, and we blaspheme, I have no problem with him putting us to death. It's clear that we are in rebellion against our Creator. When someone like Muhammad comes along and gives us rules, not only is there no clear reason to think that in resisting him, we're rebelling against our Creator, it seems like the exact opposite. Like, this is an obvious false prophet, and we're not supposed to listen to false prophets. So again, when a guy comes along and he thinks he's demon possessed and he's suicidal, tries repeatedly to hurl himself off a cliff, when he admits that he delivered revelations from the devil, he admits that he is a victim of black magic. His rules make him sound massively obsessive compulsive. Most people don't know, but you have rules for plucking here and there, and it's just he was obsessed with controlling every little facet of your life. You look at that and say, you see, it's this holistic thing, and this proves that it's from God. I'm looking at that saying, this is the weirdest dude I have ever encountered in my entire life. Again, it's the most massive collection of signs that this guy is not speaking on behalf of God. That's, if you think that's the same as God speaking from a cloud of fire and giving you some rules, we're interpreting this very, very differently.
Oh, I don't even know how to respond to that. Okay. Here's the issue, David. We're not talking about kind of like God doing these things, are we? Again, if God gave the order to slaughter the Amalekites, which I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly in Scripture, he did, even if that were the case, David, you're still running into a huge problem. And that problem is the fact that God had ordered Moses to do these things. And that's exactly what Moses did. And now you are criticizing Muhammad for doing the things Moses did. And you're essentially, your defense for that is saying, well, Muhammad is unreliable, therefore you cannot tell if, let's say, Muhammad is really a prophet of God. Okay, fair enough. What if he is? What if Muhammad really is the prophet of God, and he just happens to be demon-possessed every now and then? He has a child bride. He drinks urine and stuff. So all those things you described, David, let's just say they're true. What if all these things are true, and yet this man still is under the guidance of the Most High? What are you going to do then? But notice, David, because when you started out with this debate, and for those of you uninitiated, just watch part 1 of this series. if you when you came out of into this court, into this arena, your whole understanding was kind of criticizing Muhammad for his violence, not not for his untrustworthiness. That came out later, but the whole idea you could not trust Muhammad or did not like Muhammad is because he was rather, how would I say, prickly to your Western sensibilities. That's really what it boiled down to. Because, and again, you more or less mentioned that yourself. You had said that Muhammad engaged in war in where Augustine and St. Thomas Aquinas might have disagreed, or might have really had reservations against. So your whole understanding, your whole critique of Muhammad and of Islam's understanding of violence and tolerance was based on purely ethical claims, not on whether or not a prophet could or could not be trustworthy, because ultimately that doesn't even matter. Whether a prophet could be trustworthy or not simply is besides the point. Fact of the matter is this man from God or not? Because if Muhammad was from God, and yet doing all these things, and therefore people don't listen to Muhammad, and Muhammad slaughters them, that is justified in your view, David, because you use the exact same criteria. God orders Moses and his people to do something. They don't do it. God punishes them. So you're okay, really, with the violence in the Old Testament. And you're okay with the violence seen as in the Quran and with the Hadith and the story surrounding Muhammad. Your only hang-up is that you don't even know if Muhammad was a true prophet. But if he was, you are in it deep, buddy. That's the issue. And again, this isn't even a valid line of argumentation from an Orthodox Christian, from like just Christian orthodoxy. Now, while David Wood might be very well establishing how evangelical Christianity thinks about these issues, on no uncertain terms is he describing how Christianity would act in an ideal environment where Haqiqatjou is able to do exactly this, if not better. I'm muting up and moving on. Oh, and once again, if anybody in the chat just wants to join, the links to the StreamYard chat room are literally everywhere. It's open forum. Everyone's invited.
And you again seem to like this. You say we got rules for using the bathroom. Muslims know how to be clean. I mean, the rules are like you have to wipe with an odd number of stones, and you have to pee while squatting, and you don't need these things to be clean. It's just absolute nonsense to say that if you don't pee squatting, so much for the patriarchy here, but it's just weird to say if you don't pee while squatting, you're dirty or something like that. And keep in mind, your prophet said that most of the punishment of the grave is from peeing improperly. You're not squatting to pee, and this just it sounds absolutely insane to me. So no.
It sounds absolutely insane to you, David, because you are unable to approach Islam the way that Jews understand their religion, because the way that Muslims understand Islam is very much in the same way that Jews understand Judaism. And fact is, when the Jews have their large bodies of law, of the Talmud and the Mishnah, things like that, what they are doing is no different from Haqiqatjou's ascent to the Hadith and Sunnah, because what the Talmud and Mishnah are to the Jews, the Hadith and Sunnah are to the Muslims. And the fact is that David is utterly ignorant of this, because what he's saying is like, this is all crazy to me. Well, it's crazy to you, David, because you do not understand Islam from Muslim eyes. You're unable to appreciate how Islam sees and structures the world. Now there are valid what's the word? objections and retorts to Haqiqatjou's position, but because you are utterly infected with Westernism, you're unable to make those distinctions. It's simply put beyond you, and that is a shame.
No, this guy should not be giving rules about killing people.
You got it. Thank you very much. We'll kick it over to Daniel for his 5-minute response.
I mean, yeah, it is disgusting if you are standing and urinating. Have you been to like some of these restrooms in public, or even in the houses of Christians, actually, where it's just urine everywhere and it splashes back on their clothes? Yeah, it's disgusting, man. I don't know why are you criticizing this of all the things you want to criticize. You're like, I'm fine with the stoning in and of itself and the killing for blasphemers, but it's the urine issue that I have a problem with. Second of all, you're calling Islam obsessive and the Sharia obsessive. But hello, have you heard of Mosaic law? Have you heard of the Talmud? Have you heard of all of these kinds of rules and regulations that are found regarding the Sabbath and keeping kosher? Take a look at that maybe and see if you're not overwhelmed with the amount of rules that are required in Orthodox Judaism, which is exactly derived from the Old Testament according to Orthodox Jews. So if you have a problem with Islam in that sense, then you have a problem with the Old Testament again, and Orthodox Jews in general. I don't see you making any videos about them. Then the other thing is that people need a pillar of cloud, a miraculous pillar of smoke and lightning in order to believe in Revelation. Okay, well, then you're justifying all the disbelief in Jesus in the world today by atheists and by secular people. Isn't that your argument? You are undermining your entire religion with this kind of argument. Why should people believe in Revelation? Why should people believe in the Bible? There's not a literal cloud of smoke that's commanding it. This is the kind of stupid argument that people, the likes of Richard Dawkins and Sam Harris, make. And you're just parroting that. Like, where's the evidence of God? I don't see lightning coming from the sky. Where's the, hand from heaven, and therefore why should I believe in the Bible? This is the kind of argument you're making, and it's quite ridiculous. Also, I want to really hold you to this point about expansionist war in the New Testament, because I think you should really read this passage or maybe I'll read it for you in Deuteronomy, if I can pull it up.
We have so many questions. In the meantime,
let me.
In the meantime, folks, I want to remind you, we have so many questions. I had never seen so many questions come in the first 30 minutes that I want to warn you, folks. We almost certainly won't be able to read your question if it comes in this late. Sorry about that, folks, but we have to get these guys out of here so they can get to sleep at a decent time. But go ahead, Daniel.
So I'll find in the next 5 minutes, I'll read you the exact passage, but it describes rules for expansionist war. And it does not limit it to a certain border. It does not limit it to a certain time. I mean, look at the modern state of Israel. Okay, if you want to denounce Israel, that's fine. But they literally name their missiles, their nuclear missiles, Jericho. They name their nuclear missiles after these biblical tribes. And Benjamin Netanyahu, all of these Israeli politicians refer to their enemies, for example, in Iran or the Arab world, the Muslim world in general, and sometimes even American politicians as Amalek, the people that the Bible commands to blot their name so that their names will be blotted from the earth. So this interpretation that you're given is, I don't think, true to the Old Testament. And I cite the Jews and cite Orthodox Jews because they have an authoritative interpretation of the Old Testament. If you want to denounce them and say that they don't know what they're talking about, only modern Christians, not even Christians within the first 1800 years of Christianity, but only us now in the 21st century understand the real meaning of the Old Testament. Okay, you can make that claim. It will sound ridiculous to everyone, but feel free to make it.
You got it?
Yeah, that is actually a very fair, valid point. The fact of the matter is that the Jews of in the Torah, because again, the Torah, and especially when you get into what's the word? I guess when you get to Numbers and Deuteronomy, and then later on in Joshua, this is clearly an expansionist war going on. Because at the time, the children of Israel are already a tribe; they're already a people. They have a prophet. They have it's Moses, and even after Moses, they have Joshua. What are they doing in Canaan? Well, they're taking back land that belongs to them. Now, the Jews were never expansionist in the same way that, say, Muslim caliphates have been. However, the conquest of Canaan by the ancient Jewish people under Moses and later Joshua are taking Canaan under the exact same assumptions that the caliphs used to take power. The difference is that I can actually look at the caliphs. I can look at Muhammad, and I can call these actions immoral. And I can call the actions of Abraham, sorry, not Abraham, but, well, actually, yes, Abraham to a lesser extent, but I can call the actions of Moses and Joshua good and righteous. And I could call the actions of the Islamic world and many of its caliphates immoral, and I can use those distinctions, but David Wood does not have access to those. And I see in the stream, Diego, I'm adding you on now. Hey, buddy, how's it going?
How's it going, Fro? I'm
It's
doing
going
okay. How about you, Fro?
It's going very, very well for me. I had a nice Christmas, lots of presents. I'm very fat and happy.
Well, so did I. I can't complain. You know, like I told you in the comment section a few hours ago, I had family over for the holidays to spend Christmas Eve and then Christmas Day. This was a really busy week. That's why I wasn't really able to be with you in the last live stream last week.
Oh,
But
I
thankfully
understand that.
now I do have a chance. You know.
Hey, well, listen, you're my friend, not my slave. Okay, you can come in whenever you want.
No, it's I've never come onto a live stream on YouTube until now, so I really appreciate you inviting me. You know, and I say right now I have a chance since I also don't work today, and to me it's a blessing to have people like you in my life. That, you know, God always puts those kind of people in your way to guide you and help you grow spiritually, help you share your faith and share your thoughts on religion and God and all those things. It's always a good thing, man. And I'm glad I found you as a friend. You know,
Yeah, definitely. Oh, by the way, did you have? Hold on, let me see something here. Did you get my email by chance?
your email about what?
No, I didn't email you. Obviously, I don't have it. But I gave you my email if you ever wanted to hit me up. Did you keep that?
Yes, I kept it with me.
Okay,
Thank
so
you
so
very
you
much. I appreciate it.
okay, so you definitely have it. I just want to make sure because sometimes when I'm using StreamYard, things that I put in the private chat sometimes don't appear the first time for some reason. It's it,
Yeah,
it,
that's
it's
true.
it's weird, but I want to make sure you definitely got that. So you do. Anyway, so I've
Yeah.
been streaming for almost an hour now. Any questions on what you're looking at right now?
No, I think the Muslim is pretty much winning against David Wood. You know, that's
Yes,
pretty much what I
obviously.
think. No, it's because look, I'm not necessarily an expert like you are, but what I think is that I actually respect David Wood as a defender of mere Christianity. You know, like the things that we Catholics and Protestants kind of agree on, like the resurrection, the virgin birth, and all those kinds of things, right? But when it comes to debating atheists or other religious people that don't share Christian beliefs, there are going to be a little bit of philosophical problems because they don't belong to the church that has the fullness of the truth. So their answers might not make sense sometimes. And I think that's the case with David Wood. Since he is still Protestant, there are some areas that he might not be able to answer the Muslim, you know, in a more concise way. That's what I think, you know.
Correct, and it basically that's what I've been saying, and ultimately, but when you're going up against Islam, that's what you need to do. Like
Yeah.
for instance, what's his name, Jay Smith, right? Now, like
Yeah, Jay Smith.
some of Jay Smith's beliefs I find to just be downright kooky. Okay, but yet,
Kooky.
yeah, but yet he doesn't disqualify ancient Christian interpretation of how the how human society was to operate, and so he's
Yeah.
able to so because he doesn't dismiss those ideas, he is able to confront Islamic arguments, able to confront them on their own home turf. But David
I
Wood,
see.
yeah, but David Wood doesn't have that again, because like his Christianity, evangelical Christianity, has been so westernized, so utterly inundated with like what's the word, westernism, that
Yeah.
that he imposes westernism on Christianity, when that's not what happened. Now, no doubt,
Oh,
the West and westernism is an invention of Christianity, but you cannot
that's
use
true.
the invention to like impose upon the inventor, right?
Hmm.
And that's
Yeah,
what
that's true.
he's doing here. And you know what, a lot of like the neo-Protestantism, like say Baptist congregations and evangelicals, they have that habit.
Yeah, I see. Which one? I believe you told me last week that you come from a Protestant congregation, don't you? You're a
I
convert, right?
Yeah, I am a convert from independent Baptist fundamentalism.
I'll be back, my friend.
Okay, you might want to mute your mic, friend. Okay, I think he's muted. Okay, so we're going to be continuing on. Oh, Diego's gone. Okay, I'm sure he'll be back here soon.
Kick it over to David.
All right. Well, I quoted. I quoted Exodus to you. I will establish your borders from the Red Sea to the Mediterranean Sea, and from the desert to the Euphrates River. There were times when the Jews would need to go to war with people from farther off, but this concept of them having this obligation to go out and violently subjugate the world, that's an Islamic concept. Now, I don't even know why I'm saying this. So you said, have you been to a Christian house? Christians have urine all over. My goodness. Yeah, that's definitely what our houses are like. Isn't that right? Christians just urine all over the walls and so on. Do you see how they have to, this is how Muslims think. We're just like walking around covered in urine. I have to say I've heard it's much harder for a guy to squat while peeing. Keep in mind, we're not talking about sitting on a toilet. You're talking about squatting while peeing, than standing up, where I don't know, I have pretty good aim. I mean, I can write my name in the snow if I want to. You say the Talmud has lots of rules too. This isn't about having lots of rules. I mean, according to the Christian perspective, the Old Testament is a kind of schoolmaster until we actually get the law written on our hearts. And so it's not surprising that you would have rules, but I mean, that's not the issue here. It's that Muhammad comes with nothing except issue upon issue upon issue, and he's giving you all these details about how to regulate every little aspect of your life. It's almost like he's giving you all these things to keep you distracted from the fact that he is the most obvious false prophet in history, right? And he does, with his obsession with proper ways of going to the bathroom and how many dates to eat for this and how many stones to wipe yourself with and how frequently you need to pluck this or that. That doesn't sound like a normal guy who's giving you important rules for living. I mean, you compare that stuff to something basic like love your neighbor or do unto others as you would have them do unto you. There's no comparison here. And it really seems like, here, do all these little things that make absolutely no sense. And these will keep you convinced that you're the true people of God and that you are, as Surah 3, verse 110 says, the best of peoples ever raised up for mankind, and keep you thinking that that Jews and Christians are the worst of creatures, as Surah 98, verse 6 declares.
Okay, I'm sorry. Like, With all due respect to David, that was stupid for a multitude of reasons. Oh yeah, no. Diego, don't worry. You got your own stuff to do. You take care of that, man. If you want to come on here later, you can do that. But certainly not going to force you. Anyway, so that was stupid for a multitude of reasons, and one of those reasons, and actually the more outlandish idea, is the fact that Muhammad was some obsessive compulsive individual. Like, I suppose that can be true. In the same way, you have to suppose that aliens are on Venus, which means you need to affirm something that you have absolutely no way of proving. Short of conjuring Muhammad from the dead, there's no way you can prove he had obsessive compulsive disorder. Absolutely no way. And that's what David is trying to frame him as. There is a much, much easier explanation as to why Muhammad acts this way. Muhammad is acting this way. Muhammad has these kinds of rules, these very in-depth, numerous rules, because he's learning from an example that acts like he has. In the 6th century, Emperor Justinian had exiled entire populations of heretical sects of Christians that believed in observing the old Jewish law and would keep the commandments, along with the belief that, well, Jesus was the Messiah. And these people were exiled to the Hijaz region of the Arabian Peninsula. Moreover, to the point, however, not only are these people here, but actual Jews are in this region also, specifically Sadducee Jews. They are also in this region along with heretical Christians, all of them believing in the same thing, that there are a large corpus of laws that govern every area of human affair. I mean, and then later on, when Muhammad becomes a warlord and starts conquering, he badly mauls the Byzantines and completely absorbs the Sassanids. The Sassanid Empire had the largest autonomous population of Jewry in the ancient world at this time. And moreover, to the point, where the Talmud and the Mishnah, specifically the Talmud, where the Talmud was written, we know, is in the Babylonian regions, in Iran and Iraq. And these are the same regions that Muslims later conquered. And not only that, but later on, in these Hadith and Sunnah traditions, when they're being written, when the large body of law that governs Islam is being penned, it's not being penned in the Hijaz region. It is being written in Iraq and Iran, or what we now call Iraq and Iran today. So what we have is essentially a population of Jews that wrote the Talmud, and the Talmud was basically their legacy. Later on, these same regions where the Talmud came out from are conquered, and wouldn't you know it, the Hadith and the Sunnah then come out from writers in these regions. Muhammad had believed that there were multiple rules governed human society, because this was simply a cultural assumption of the people he lived with. This has nothing to do with obsessive compulsive disorder, and while I will admit it is possible he had the disorder, there's a much more plausible explanation given the context of the people he lived with, of the religious assumptions he surrounded himself with. There's no reason to lord this explanation of mental disorder over the much more reasonable, rational, and plausible one. You're doing scholarship a disservice here, David. But you know, I'll give David some grace here. He might not know the historical context of Muhammad's entrance onto the world stage. So he might just be utterly ignorant of the fact that the Hadith and Sunnah are very much parallel to Jewish Talmud and Mishnah. So I'll give him some grace on that. I will just say that he isn't aware of these things, and so I'm not going to judge this interview based on his lack of understanding when having it. With that, we can mute up and continue.
Now, you misrepresented me here and said I was claiming that people need miracles in order to believe in revelation. Not my point at all. I mean, if you're going to believe in revelation, yes, there should be evidence for it. I believe we have that evidence, but that's not what I'm talking about at all. I'm saying if someone comes along and starts saying, here you have to put some people to death. We have to execute some people. We can't allow blasphemy. Here are the punishments for this or that. You shouldn't just let anyone come up to you and start giving orders like that. And biblically, you're not supposed to just let anyone come up to you and start giving orders like that. That's why we're told not to follow false prophets in the Bible. And if you look at the criteria in the Bible for a false prophet, I mean, my goodness, Muhammad is like the paradigm example of someone that no one should ever listen to. So when Muhammad comes along, and again, this is the same guy who tried repeatedly to hurl himself off a cliff. He's the same guy whose first impression of his revelations was that they were demonic. He's the same guy who claims to be a victim of black magic that's giving him delusional thoughts and false beliefs. He's the same guy who keeps getting these revelations that have no purpose other than satisfying his desires, to the point where his own wife, Aisha, his child bride, said after he got one of these revelations, your Lord hastens to satisfy your wishes and desires. She's noticing this. When that guy comes out and says, we have to violently subjugate the entire world, and anyone who criticizes me, being the most obvious false prophet in history, anyone who criticizes me has to be killed, and anyone who tries to leave me has to be killed, and if our wives speak out, we'll just beat them into submission. Someone comes along like that, that is not the sort of person that anyone should be listening to. And so to actually compare that sort of thing, the most obvious false prophet in history, giving you rules about slaughtering unbelievers in the name of Allah and listening to him, and you compare that to a pillar of cloud telling you better listen to him, again, there's no comparison here.
So you would admit, David, that what we see Muhammad doing, his violence and his subjugation, is bad only because you feel he did not have the seal of prophethood. Okay. But again, I need to wonder what you're criticizing Muhammad in his prophethood, how you're criticizing it, has nothing to do with the argument. Again, what is the frame of the debate? How tolerance and violence are framed within Christianity and Islam. Now, you seem to be of the persuasion that violence and intolerance have no place in Christianity because you previously denied the existence of a Christian state, or of an ideal Christian society, rather, which is essentially the same thing. And I find that very odd because you're being very opaque with your argumentation. I'm having a very hard time understanding what you're even trying to elucidate here. Very hard time understanding what you're trying to convey. Maybe I'm stupid, but I don't know. I mean, Haqiqatjou seems to be equally as confused. So maybe he can clear you up a little bit. Let's listen to his response and see what happens.
You got it. Kick it over to Daniel for 5 minutes.
Okay, so I have the passage in Deuteronomy. When you march up to attack a city, make its people an offer of peace. If they accept and open their gates, all the people in it shall be subject to forced labor and shall work for you. If they refuse to make peace and they engage you in battle, lay siege to that city. When your Lord your God delivers it into your hand, put the sword to all the men in it. As for women, the children, the livestock, and everything else in the city, you may take these as plunder for yourselves, and you may use the plunder of the Lord your God gives you from your enemies. This is how you are to treat all the cities that are at a distance from you and do not belong to the nations nearby. Okay, so this is Deuteronomy 20 verses 10 through 20. So continuing. However, in the cities of the nations the Lord your God is giving you as an inheritance, do not leave alive anything that breathes. Completely destroy them. And then it mentions the tribes, as the Lord your God has commanded you. Otherwise, they will teach you to follow all the detestable things they do in worshiping their gods, and you will sin against the Lord your God. So this is very explicit that it's talking about nations that are nearby and nations that are not nearby, meaning the entire world. And again, this is how authoritative scholars like Maimonides have interpreted, including Roman emperors, including the Byzantines, including the Spanish, on and on. Only modern liberal Christians such as yourself, who really your true religion is liberal secularism and modern human rights, and you're just putting this Christian window dressing. Only Christians like that have a different interpretation of this verse. You know, you want to reduce Islam to being concerned with, urine and stuff like that. Let me tell you what Islam teaches. Islam teaches belief in the one God, creator, without associating partners with him. Islam teaches to respect, revere, and follow the prophets that have come throughout time since the beginning of creation of Adam, peace be upon him, all the way to the final messenger, Muhammad, peace be upon him. Islam teaches love for your parents, respect for your parents. Islam teaches to look to the signs of God Almighty in the creation and marvel at his wonder and his bounty. Islam teaches you to have sincerity to God, to not be a hypocrite. Islam teaches you to not have hatred and hasad or jealousy in your heart. Islam teaches you to have wonderful families, beautiful communities, worshiping God day after day, 5 times a day, from the moment we wake up to the moment we go to bed, to maintain the remembrance of God Almighty, Allah, on the tongues continuously, with praising God, with thanking God constantly, called dhikr. This is what Islam teaches. It is the true religion of God. It is beautiful. And I mean, this is the heart of the religion, is true piety and love and devotion and submission to God Almighty. And then the bonus is that we also get to understand how to live life from the minutia, the micro scale, all the way to larger macro matters, how we can organize society, how we can establish a just society in God's vision on this earth. How can you live? I mean, Christians will be surprised. I'm surprised to hear you say that, which you just did 5 minutes ago or 10 minutes ago, that actually there is no ideal Christian nation. Really? Are Christians supposed to just sit back and allow these tyrants and these satanic forces to just come and destroy the churches, to destroy belief in God? Are Christians supposed to just sit back and allow blasphemy, blasphemers, all under the banner of free speech and tolerance and liberalism to, create this, speaking of urine, piss Christ, right? Where they take an image of Jesus Christ and they put it in a vat of urine and they call this art. Or they go and start talking about the Blessed Virgin Mary and they call her a prostitute or a whore. And we're supposed to just sit back and say, oh, okay, there's no problem with this. Guess what? Islam has a clear solution for people who blaspheme against Jesus Christ, who blaspheme against the Virgin Mary. I'm very shocked to hear David Wood say that, yeah, we don't have any guidance when it comes to these kinds of issues because, whatever. So Muslims, we have a solution. We're not going to let people do this piss Christ or insult the Virgin Mary. We don't tolerate that. We're not about that. And, I really hope that Christians can see the wisdom of the Sharia and Islamic law, at least through this lens.
You got it. Thank you very much. We'll go over to David for 5 minutes.
And he's not wrong, folks. He's absolutely not wrong. Islam has an answer for blasphemers like that. Now, David Wood doesn't, and ultimately that's going to be his downfall because there is a response in Christianity for things such as these. Because the ideal Christian nation is nothing that David Wood would recognize as Christianity. It's something he'd be rather uncomfortable with living. And the way that Muslims would respond to this utter blasphemy, utter hatred of holy things, essentially, Christians and Christianity also have an answer to such degeneracies. The difference is essentially, again, it is the understanding of secularism, how morality is to be enshrined in secular law and therefore kept. Now, I guarantee you, when we press play here, David is going to have no answer to Haqiqatjou's objections here to his understanding of Christianity. I guarantee he doesn't have any. And that's because in David Wood's understanding of Christianity, Haqiqatjou has a point. It's basically liberalism and Westernism that has a Christian window dressing. That's what's going on here. Because the way David Wood articulates Christianity is utterly foreign to how Christians historically have seen the faith. Like just 200-300 years ago, they would be appalled by what David Wood is saying today. Absolutely appalled. And so what we have is almost an impasse where Haqiqatjou is looking at true religion in the right direction, seeing the way seeing the way society ought to be structured in the right direction, yet using the wrong ways of getting there. David Wood doesn't even have that. For him, Christianity is nothing more than a private practice. That's all it is. It's something that if you're cool with, you're cool with it, but it's never something that ought to be given to the rest of the world. It's not something that the whole world needs to be converted by and to. It's not something that is holy in so much that it supersedes your pleasantries, that it supersedes your, as I would say, your comfort. David doesn't see it like that, and I've got a feeling it's going to show here.
All right. Daniel quotes Deuteronomy, interpreting this as a command to subjugate the entire world. Again, you have to be viewing this through Islam.
And again, that is another mischaracterization from David Wood. If you just looked at Haqiqatjou's argument 5 minutes ago, he made it abundantly clear this is how war was governed between nations closest to you and nations afar off. So basically, you would war with your direct neighbors differently than you would war with a foreign power. That is what Deuteronomy is saying. And you know what? Haqiqatjou absolutely agrees. At no point did Haqiqatjou ever say this is a command to subjugate the entire world. What he argued is that this is essentially how Israel and how the people of God are to approach war, or to approach conquest. It's not an order to subjugate the world. It is an order as to approach conquests to foreign powers. Oh, okay. Thank you so much, Diego. Thank you. As I said, your criticism is much valued. But any suggestions you can give me that I can make this review even better, greatly appreciated. Thank you for your 2 cents. So, getting back to it, what David Wood just characterized as Haqiqatjou's argument is not Haqiqatjou's argument. He comes off as very dishonest when he says that, because on no uncertain terms did Haqiqatjou ever make that argument. This is something coming from Wood himself, and what he wants Haqiqatjou to say. Mute up.
Islamic lenses. Where have you seen Jews do this? Where have you seen Jews going out and subjugating the entire world? They did have a concept of being at war with other nations. They had not just the nations of the land that God gave them. They had a concept of being at war with other nations and of triumphing over them. they're not, they understand they understand that they may have to have war against other cities that are far away, that they may conquer those cities and so on. They're not going around subjugating the world. Again, where did they do this? They had plenty of time. When did they do this? And they had some very powerful kings along the way. When did they do this? You said that my religion is modern liberalism. No, modern liberalism has been influenced by my religion, but then they took God out of the equation. And that's why they had some problems explaining their reasons, right? So the idea that we should care about everyone in the world, that we should love everyone in the world, that we should promote the human rights of everyone in the world, whether other people are the same religion as us or the same skin color as us and so on. That came from the Christian concept that God loves us, that we're created in the image of God, and so on. Eventually that permeates society, and then they take God and Jesus out of it. And if you ask them, well, why?
That we have an equality with God, or that we have an equality with each other. Good point, David. Again, you made a good point here, that the Bible teaches that all humans in a certain way have an equality to each other. As Paul had said, there is no Jew or Greek, there is no man or woman, there is no rich and poor, there is no slave or free. That all of us in a distinct way are equal to each other, that no one is over another. No one is anybody's master. Correct, David. However, I don't understand your comment about Christianity, your religion, influencing modern secular, or influencing modern liberalism. No, it's actually the other. It's not so much that one is clearly the influence of the other, but one is the invention of the other. Like, modern liberalism isn't like Christianity didn't affect modern liberalism in the same way that Edison didn't affect the light bulb. One is clearly the offspring from the other. Okay? Westernism, liberalism, the way we understand it, comes from the seedbed in Christianity. This is not so. Your mistake, however, is taking what is growing from the seedbed, in this case, liberalism, Westernism, and imposing that on the seedbed. It's clearly what is wrong with your worldview here. Clearly, like it's beyond doubt at this point.
Why should I be concerned with someone on the other side of the world? It's not a very good answer, but this is why we happen to line up on certain issues, like don't kill someone that you have no right to kill, as we find jihadis doing quite frequently. You said Islam teaches, and you gave this list of laundry list of things that you believe are good: one God, no partners, and so on. I don't know about that. I mean, Islam seems a very Muhammad-focused religion. Allah seems like a very Muhammad-focused God. We could get into kissing the black stone and so on. I'll admit that is outside our current topic. But you seem to be giving this list that has nothing to do with what we're talking about here. My point is that we have no reason to trust Muhammad as giving commands from God. We just have none. And so when a guy like this comes out and starts telling you, go and kill this person, go and kill that person, go murder this group, subjugate Jews, subjugate Christians, tell these other people to convert or die, beat these women into submission, kill that cartoonist over there, he's making fun of me. When someone like that starts giving you orders, the correct response should be, why should I believe anything you're saying? And all we have is, well, Islam teaches one God. Islam teaches love for parents. Islam teaches look to the signs, great families. I mean, I hear you bringing this up, great families. I mean, Muhammad had one of the most dysfunctional families I've ever heard about. And I grew up in a West Virginia trailer park, so we know about some dysfunctional families. But I mean, my goodness, all those wives, the sex slaves, the wives constantly fighting and bickering. Muhammad gets caught with his having sex with his slave girl in his wife Hafsa's bed. Then he's going to have to divorce all his wives because they're complaining. This is massively dysfunctional. And if that's your ideal pattern, you got some issues here. And the final point, you say that Christians, we allow people to blaspheme. That's true. Jesus allowed people to blaspheme against him, right? Jesus did. People were saying all sorts of things about Jesus. Jesus said he could call on plenty of angels to wipe them out, but he didn't. And so that's really the strange thing here that I don't think you're getting. You think we're being inconsistent for pointing out that Muhammad did all these things, and there's no reason to think that he's speaking from God, and so we're hypocritical for pointing out all this violence. The commands that Jesus gave us to love everyone, even our enemies, we take these seriously. These are the commands that are directed towards us. So when Muhammad comes along and says that he's in the same line with Jesus, and he turns Jesus into a Muslim prophet, that's blasphemy. So if you think that Islam is here to punish blasphemers against Jesus, check the mirror, buddy.
I'm beyond words at this point. That's poor. This is extremely poor argumentation. Like, I don't even know what to say. Yes, Jesus allowed people to blaspheme him. Why did he allow people to blaspheme him, David? Because if you understand that context, if you understand why Jesus allowed to blaspheme him, it makes very little sense for you to think that blasphemy is okay today, because the context of Jesus' time and place in history is not the same as today. Get it? What I mean to say, David, is that when Jesus was alive on earth, he certainly allowed himself to be abused many, many multiple times. No doubt. Does it therefore expand to the idea that blasphemy is okay? The blasphemy should not be punished by secular or ecclesiastical authority, that it should just be allowed to continue, no harm done? No, it doesn't follow. Just because Jesus allowed blasphemy to be done to him in that time and place, it does not follow logically that that is the way it ought to be from that time period on, considering that Jesus' very life is a very, very abrupt cutoff from how blasphemy was understood in Judea. Because among the Jews, blasphemy was a death penalty. In fact, Jesus Christ, the official reason he was put to death was due to blasphemy. And so now Jesus, who died the death of a slave for blaspheming, suddenly blasphemy is just completely all right from that point onward? That doesn't make sense. Especially from Jewish eyes, it's just a blasphemer meeting his just deserts. But from Christian eyes, we understand this was different. This was significant because God, allowing himself to be slandered and smeared, became a curse and essentially took on the curse, the punishment that was due to us, onto himself. That is why he allowed himself to be blasphemed. Because in that time and place, he needed to be blasphemed. He needed to be punished. He needed to be smeared. This in no way eliminates the very real understanding that blasphemy should be illegal in the ideal Christian society and state. It's your view is utterly irreconcilable with the thousands of years of Christian history that's become before you. But I think Haqiqatjou could probably demonstrate his lack more than I could, so we're gonna get on that.
You got it. Thank you very much, David. We'll kick it over to Daniel for 5 minutes as well, and we've got this is the last 5 minute portion. So, floor is all yours, Daniel.
Okay. Well, I mean, why did the Jews not conquer? It's not because or didn't conquer the world or have many conquests. It's not for lack of effort, or it's not because they didn't have the command to do that. They just weren't successful. They weren't like Muslims. So, I mean, don't hate the player, hate the game. That's basically what I have to say about that. And this idea that Christianity is inspired liberalism, I mean, this is very silly, because again, the main writers of liberalism and the main creators of liberalism were deists. They were atheists. Some of them were extremely hostile to traditional Christianity, and they actually wanted to leave the influence of Christianity and the church and the influence of scripture. So I think your history there is quite messed up. About Jesus allowing blasphemy, so you think that Jesus would be okay with people being allowed in his society to insult his mother and call her a prostitute and call him basically, I don't want to use the word. Like, do you think this is something that Jesus would approve of? Well, what's the result of such a society? Because this kind of widespread blasphemy actually leads to atheism. It leads to mass apostasy. It leads to the destruction of religion, because religion is seen as something that is to be spit on, to be laughed at, to be insulted. And that's what we see in the modern secular West. And to say that Jesus is fine with that, it would tolerate that, well, if you're really saying that, that means that Jesus's message will lead to the extinction of Christianity. And in fact, when you look at the actual Christian fathers and the Roman Catholic Church, they were extremely harsh about stamping out blasphemy. They were extremely harsh about stamping out any kind of heresy. So I guess according to you, they misunderstood Jesus's message, because they were forcing mass conversion. They were killing the heretics. They were killing the blasphemers. I guess they, for 1,000 years, or actually 1,700 years, didn't understand the true message of Christianity. It only took John Locke or Thomas Jefferson to come along and say that, actually Christianity is inspiring us to write the Declaration of Independence and to value free speech so that people can go and make piss Christ. I mean, this is a very bizarre interpretation. I mean, ultimately, when we talk about tolerance, what is tolerance? This is something that needs to be defined. So when David talks about tolerance, he's talking about a liberal tolerance. And this is based on the idea that we should allow people to maximize their individual freedom, and any restriction on people's individual freedom using the law or using coercion is intolerant. Okay, so for example, if you don't let people blaspheme against Jesus, if you don't let people commit, all kinds of deviant sexual acts, and you restrict that, then you're being intolerant. So this is the kind of liberal tolerance that Islam doesn't have. Obviously, we have all these corporal punishments, the hudud, and so forth, and we have expansionist war and so forth. So Islam is not tolerant according to liberalism, and this is basically David's whole argument. But there's another view of tolerance. We can call it traditional tolerance, because traditional tolerance is based on the idea that individuals and human beings, they need to be in families. They have a need to be in loving marital relationships. They have a need to be a part of a community. They need to have faith in God and have a connection with God. And these are all values that are extremely important to human beings. But if you have this kind of tolerance, this liberal tolerance for everything, where you're maximizing human liberty, human freedom and choice, that will actually destroy marriages, that will destroy families, that will destroy communities. And this is exactly why Islam restricts people's individual liberty, despite people saying that this is intolerant or this is contrary to liberalism. Yeah, Islam does contradict liberalism and this idea of liberal tolerance, but we want to tolerate, and this is very clear within the Sharia, we tolerate Christian family law, Jewish family law. The Sharia, yes, it's not doesn't grant equality between Muslims and religious minorities, but it allows this kind of tolerance. And when we look at the history of Christianity in the Muslim world, Christians have been living for over 1,000 years with their institutions, with their religion and rituals in Muslim lands run by Sharia. But look at 200 years of secularism. Christianity is dying out. Christianity is on the way out. Churches are closing. There's mass apostasy. And this is the value of secularism.
We will jump into.
Thank you so much, Daniel. You absolutely hit the nail on the head. Absolutely. Because what Daniel is saying essentially comes down to essentially a sense of a clash of civilizations, where basically if you allow your civilization to be so openly repudiated, so openly humiliated with absolutely no response, or worse yet, you are encouraging such repudiation, such humiliation, you yourself lose any impact you have in the world, and even like passing your ideas down, your civilization, to the next generation. You absolutely lose it. And so what I have highlighted here, Protestantism as a system leads to atheism. And well, I will not say that as a absolute truth. You can definitely see the logic in this. I mean, almost. I mean, like when you look at it, because like Diego also said this. Protestantism, philosophically speaking, is atheism. There really is no God in Protestantism. You are your own God. You decide the meaning of the Bible, theology, and morality. Now, I disagree with this. I would not say Protestantism says you are your own God. Rather, more nuancedly, in Protestantism, it removes the authority that law that law. It removes, how to put it. It removes the authority that lawful figures have over your life. Okay? Because in Protestantism, the church really has no authority, right? The church doesn't have authority. Your priests, bishops, none of these guys have authority. They're basically merely opinions, like magisterial teachings, councils, everything that went into the very sinew, the muscle of what we know as Christianity, the Code of Canon Law. All of these things can be utterly dismissed, disregarded, and burned. And certainly that's how Martin Luther saw it. And you see that in his behaviors after the Council of Worms. The issue. No, they're not your friend. Oh, okay. Sorry, Diego. I thought these were your opinions. I apologize. They're not my words. A friend of mine said that. Okay. I apologize. Okay. But in either case, the point still stands. What Protestantism is, it's not an act of apostasy, but rather theologically, device is not. They need to. Okay, yeah, somebody wants to get on Big Daddy, I guess that's your name. You got to connect your camera and your mic before I. Okay, and you left. Okay, never mind then. Anyway, so getting back to the point. The whole idea of Protestantism is basically a detachment from authority of the Christian, that you are not authorized to do anything, really. And so, what I find very interesting is that Haqiqatjou has a much more robust understanding of these attitudes and these ideas than Wood has. And it's humiliating, really. Also, whenever you want to come in, Diego, the chat room is still open. If of course you want to come in.
I don't know how this is going to go, but we are going to go into open dialogue. Thank you very much, gentlemen. And by the way, want to remind you folks, our guests are linked in the description. We really do appreciate these guys. And so want to encourage you, as always, to attack the arguments instead of the person in the live chat and the comments. But with that, we're going into open discussion. The floor is all yours, gentlemen.
All right. You seem really confused, and I get it that most Muslims are, about how we could not, I guess, kill someone who blasphemes against Jesus. And this goes back to different ideas in our religions. If there was ever a time to defend Jesus by slaughtering his enemies, that would have been in the Garden of Gethsemane, where a group of soldiers came to take him into custody and ultimately take him to his execution. And one of his followers, Peter, actually did pull out a sword and used it. Jesus rebuked him, said, "Put your sword back into its place. Those who live by the sword will die by the sword." So the idea that we have from Jesus is, hey, God doesn't need you out going around slaughtering people who say something about Jesus. But notice, if we didn't hold that view, if we said, nope, anyone who says something wrong about Jesus, anyone who condemns Jesus, anyone who blasphemes Jesus, we have to go on a killing spree. I mean, Islam blasphemes Jesus every bit as much as any atheist does, and so look at what you're saying. You're arguing for a massive bloodbath. Hey, anyone who says something wrong about Jesus, we have to go on a killing spree. So we got to go and kill. We got to go kill the atheists. We got to kill the Muslims. We got to kill everybody.
No. This is not the point. First of all,
before I let him respond, because, well, he already did, and I'm going to press play here, that's not actually the Christian perspective. Now, Dave, that is correct, Diego, absolutely. The majority of former Christians that I know are from extremely fundamentalist sects. And same here, actually, and oftentimes, right, a lot of the people that I had known from my fundamentalist Protestant background are in fact atheists, or at the very least irreligious today. The vast majority of them. And in any case, getting back to the point, in a Christian society, blasphemy would still be against the law. It would still be very much, what would be the term? Wrong to do. Secular law would forbid you from blaspheming Jesus or from Mary. And so much of Islam in a ideal Christian society would be set to the side, essentially, you could say. But the idea that we would just slaughter people for blaspheming, slaughter people for a heresy and things like that. No, this is a Protestant's imagination and fictionalization of what the Catholic Church was, on no uncertain terms. Like even when the church had more authority and had state sanction to be able to carry out inquisitions, very few people in any of the inquisitions that the church had launched were ever executed. Very few. If convicted in a court of blasphemy or heresy, the punishments were rarely ever death. Rarely ever. The only known exceptions to this that I am aware of are from leaders of specific heretical sects. That is not to say that every member of that sect would be executed, but that there are, as I keep saying, distinctions here that need to be enumerated, that need to be articulated, that David is frankly unable to do, because David Wood's understanding of Christianity has huge rose-tinted glasses on, and those rose-tinted glasses is called Western liberalism, or Westernism itself, however you want to say it. Either way, David does not understand Christianity as it has historically operated. Now, Haqiqatjou does. He absolutely understands how Christianity operated historically. Where he's wrong on is the fact that we would reply to such blasphemy and heresy with an immediate death penalty. It's not how it would work. Now, we would defend our civilization, defend our religion, in which case the secular courts and authorities would have a heavy hand in that. But that is not to say that, oh, you curse God, well, okay, well, you can also curse God as you burn in a pyre. That's not how it worked back then, or at any time in Christianity. And yet even this, even the mere prosecution, even the mere conviction, the mere punishment for heresy and blasphemy, much less punishment with the death penalty, is enough to really get under David Wood's skin. And you can tell that. Anyway, I'm going to mute up and we're going to continue.
Islam and Christianity are the only pro-Jesus religions in the world, right? There are plenty of religions actually that are atheists and Jews. They have a very derogatory notion of Jesus. Arguably, they are anti-Jesus. You don't have any criticism for them. You want to say that Muslims are blaspheming Jesus when we love Jesus. We're expecting his return. We want to be followers of Jesus in the end.
Okay, and this is where I need to criticize Haqiqatjou. We understand you love Jesus. We understand you put a high reverence on Jesus Christ as a prophet, even though we put one higher on him and calling him God, right? We understand that. The issue is the way that you love Jesus, the way that you have honored him, is in and of itself a heresy, a blasphemy, when you take into account how Christians view him. So no, in no way am I invalidating your love of Jesus, Haqiqatjou. Just understand the way you love Jesus is not Orthodox Christianity. In fact, it is an utter blasphemy from the way Christians understand the risen Christ and Lord. So it's not so much that we want to execute you for this blasphemy as you might have articulated before. No, it's rather just the fact that your love of Christ is in and of itself irreconcilable with Christianity, and therefore is something that would fall under the blasphemer heretic banner.
End times. Okay, so if this makes us, the blasphemers that you want to focus on, that seems kind of bizarre. But I want to ask you this question. When you say that live by the sword, die by the sword, this is Jesus's value. Okay, that can be a good personal value of self-sacrifice, forgiveness. I concede that. But what if you are in a Christian city or a Christian country, a nation, and there is an invading force of pagans, let's say, or whatever, atheists who want to come and slaughter all of the Christians. They want to take all of your land. They want to take all of your property. Should the Christians, as a policy, just turn the other cheek and say, live by the sword, die by the sword? We're not going to resist. Is this the kind of pacifism that you're advocating?
No, and I thought I made this clear in my opening statement. I don't know if you caught it all, but the New Testament does talk about governments and protecting people's rights and having to punish wrongdoers and so on. And it's the combination of this idea of respecting other human beings and loving other human beings while understanding the necessity for war in certain circumstances that gives rise to just war theory. So I know you're a little confused by me quoting Augustine and so on. There, I was just giving a little history about how the ideas were brought together and applied to other situations. But as far as what Jesus was saying, Jesus is talking about sort of people coming after him right there. It's understood that there are governments, that there are laws. Huh?
But that's what I'm saying. It's a contradiction. People were coming after Jesus, and he says, don't raise a sword. So that kind of value, that kind of teaching cannot apply for an entire nation of people, because it means
the Bible doesn't. I don't believe that does apply. That the idea there is, you've got Jesus. If someone's coming after Jesus and God knows what he's doing, and Jesus tells you, hey, do not defend me, it doesn't seem like now I should be going around killing people over Jesus when someone actually did that when someone actually tried to do that, tried to defend Jesus with a sword, he said, "Don't do that." He's not saying, "Hey, no one should ever defend themselves, or countries shouldn't defend themselves against invaders," and so on. You are specifically asking, how can we allow blasphemy against Jesus? How can we not kill people over
then
blasphemy
how do
against
you-
Jesus? I'm saying that's the example we got from Jesus. If Jesus is saying, "Hey, don't hack people up over me," then who am I to say now, you know what? I think
And
I
he
got to
did
go
say
start
that.
hacking. I got to start hacking people up over Jesus.
And the problem with this interpretation is the fact that what are the context cues that happened that Jesus would say that? Because when Jesus says, "He who lives by the sword dies by the sword," no doubt there is truth to that. Did Jesus? So obviously, murder is wrong. Correct. But did the defense of Jesus just begin there and became defined by that one act? Or perhaps could it be that when Jesus said that, he was saying it because of a time, place, and circumstance that he and the apostles found themselves in? When Jesus says, "Put sheathe thy sword, for he who lives by the sword dies by the sword," did he have this understanding that this should also apply to all governments with Christians running them? No, of course not. He never thought that. So when Jesus is saying this, he means it in a particular place and context, which means it's irreconcilable to how David wants to describe this. Can't be done. I'm muting up.
So then how do you interpret all of these Christians throughout history, all of the Roman emperors, Christian Roman emperors in the Catholic Church that were killing heretics? In Jesus' name because of their beliefs.
I can tell you. Yeah, I could give you.
You're going to denounce all of that.
This is my take on this. Right? For 3 centuries, Christians didn't kill anyone. It never occurred to them that they're supposed to control the world. According to the New Testament, the harshest penalty that the church gives as the church is excommunication. Paul says, "Who am I to judge those outside the church? God will judge those outside the church." So the Christian concept, as far as penalties and so on, hey, you don't want to follow the rules of Christianity. There's the door over there. There's the door. Christians don't cause any problems and will generally be fine under various governments. When Christianity permeated the Roman Empire, the Emperor Constantine eventually gets so he's a pagan, but he gets a dream, and he sees a cross, and he in this dream, which he interprets as revelation, it says, "Conquer by this." So he's supposed to conquer by the cross. What you have there, again, this is my take. What you have after that is a sort of Christian Roman Empire hybrid. And the Roman Empire had a Roman Empire kind of way of doing things. The ideals of the Roman Empire are crush everything that gets in our way, destroy. We have to control the world. We have to conquer. And then now it becomes, and we're doing this with Jesus. We're doing this with Jesus. We're doing this with Christianity. So it's my view that these ideas don't come from Christianity. You never get the idea from the Apostle Paul or from the teachings of Jesus.
Jesus said, "Render unto Caesar what is Caesar's." So he actually does explicitly endorse Caesar. He does endorse actually the Roman Empire.
Yeah.
That was awful. Okay. All right, well, listen, we've been streaming for about 2 hours now, so I'm going to put it up here in a little bit. I'm going to respond to this first. David is right, in a sense. Christianity is a uniquely pacifist religion. Not so much that it is anti-violence, but just how non-violent it is. And again, I attribute that to its understanding of the way of the sacred and the profane. Be that as it may, however, now if David Wood takes on this understanding of Christianity, he now has a double plus ungood problem. Constantine arose in the 4th century. So 300 years, as he said, Christianity existed without killing anybody. After Constantine, however, now you have Christians killing people, supposedly. Or, well, I guess you do to an extent. So essentially, now heresy, blasphemy is now illegal, and people are prosecuted and sometimes executed for their crimes in this realm. Now David Wood has a problem because this has been going on for well over 1,000 years after Constantine, as in the understanding that heresy and blasphemy is a crime that can be punished is almost as old as Christianity itself. You see, I have a much better understanding of how Christianity interacted with the world. So basically, Constantine, a Roman emperor, became Christian, and then he subsequently made Christianity a legal religion. However, the violence that he attributes to this so-called Roman Empire Christianity hybrid wouldn't come for another almost century yet, because that's when Christianity became the official religion of Rome. And that is important for a multitude of reasons. First of all, now that Christianity is the religion of Rome, now it fundamentally changes Roman attitudes to everything, to culture, to society, to even economics. And so what essentially happened is that Christianity was being used as a cultural glue to keep a people, a civilization, a nation together from fragmenting. That's what it was all about. That's why the Council of Nicaea, which, by the way, David, you actually believe in, your understanding of the Trinity comes from the Council of Nicaea. Your understanding of the Trinity came because a Christian emperor, Constantine, ordered its creation, and bishops came in and argued to understand the nature of the Trinity and of the subject of Arianism, and that is because Arianism at the time was a threat to Christianity. A threat to Christianity, which was which was the biggest religion of Rome at this time, threatened the unification of the whole nation, of the empire. And so what we have, David, it isn't so much of a Christian Roman Empire hybrid, where the ways of doing things the Roman Empire way survived. That's where you see this violence. No. Rather, Christianity is the cultural glue in which the Roman Empire is using to stay alive. And moreover, that this understanding of nation and state and religion bleeds over into when Rome finally fragments into the different kingdoms of Europe. Okay? It's not so much... Hold on, someone's calling me. Okay, that is taken care of. So, the issue going on here is that what David Wood does not understand is that this isn't a Roman Empire way of doing things, which is with a monopoly on violence. No. This comes from an understanding of how Christianity operates along with the state. That the moral instructions that Christianity gives is enshrined by the secular state. In this case, it was by the emperor. Now, as previously said, David Wood's interpretation of this has a definite edge to it that really cuts him open like a stuck pig. And that is, the fact remains that even that if David Wood is correct, that Christianity has been like this, has been I guess a Roman Empire Christian hybrid for literally thousands of years after this point. This is how it was understood, like even by the Protestant reformers and their Catholic contemporaries. This was even how it was understood by the Catholic nations of the 18th and 19th centuries, right up to the collapse of monarchism. So David has to then, therefore has to at least concede the fact that this way of understanding Christianity that he has had a remarkably short shelf life, and therefore that this false understanding of Christianity, of having a Roman Empire Jesus Christ crossover hybrid mix, utterly controlled Christianity far longer than Jesus Christ has or did. And myself, maybe David would disagree, that's not a hill I would be comfortable dying on. I'll leave it at that. And that concludes us. Okay, everybody. We have been streaming for just over 2 hours now. We've got officially to the 1 hour and 38 minute mark, all nearly 50 minutes just like last time. I've been your host, Fro. This has been the Pale Galilean, and it has been absolutely fun. I wish Diego could have had a bigger role in this, but you know what? It's fine. It's absolutely fine. He has his own family obligations, and I wish him all of God's blessings. Anyway, everybody, that has been everything we're here to do. God bless. Viva Cristo Rey. This is Fro signing off.